te trae por aquí? Cuéntame, ¿qué me vas a decir?
Bienvenido, oyente. Welcome, listener. This is episode 2. My name is Jesenia Chavez, and I am here once again with
Jaime Mayorquín, and together we are your hosts, your guides, your cuento curators for finally another episode of the still fairly new, primarily Latino, Latina, Latinx, or maybe even Latine storytelling podcast. ¿Qué me cuentas?
¿Qué me cuentas tú?
So, originally, I was going to try to open with like witty comments about tamales during the holidays, New Year's resolutions, and other such rituals. Las uvas que comí, the vision board I made, la rosca de reyes, and all that usual stuff from enero. But we're deep into the month and things got very intense very quickly already. And we don't need to get into it. Last year was rough, for sure. But also, it gave us a lot of time to reimagine, reassess what is important to us. I still feel like a new year brings an opportunity to try to imagine new versions of ourselves, to make changes, to create new possibilities, and start anew. So, with that said, our theme this time around is Nacimientos, stories of birth, rebirth, and beginnings. Our first cuento is by my friend and co host Jaime Mayorquín. It is titled Débil.
It's not something I'm proud to admit, but for most of my adult life, I've viewed myself as weak. Being the youngest of 4, my mother kind of babied me growing up. She was especially protective of me, and it wasn't until my early 20s that I found out that her reason for doing it was that a few weeks after being born, I almost died. As she tells it, it was the first days of spring, but still felt like winter in the cold apartment we lived in across the street from the projects of Aliso Village and Boyle Heights. And I had been crying nonstop for almost 2 days the night that she told my dad, El niño tiene algo, estoy preocupada. He was getting ready to go out for the night to meet up with his friends, and so he was like, Los niños lloran, ¿qué quieres que haga? So she insisted that something was wrong with me. Por favor, no salgas, ándale, llévame al hospital. But dismissively he said that she was exaggerating so he wouldn't go out. He finished getting ready and left even after she swore she would take the bus if she had to General Hospital. Apparently, eventually, his conscience got the best of him, and a while later he passed by their nearest bus stop where he found her holding her newborn with her 3 toddlers bundled and huddled beside her. Quickly, he put my 3 young siblings in the back seat. There were no child seat or seatbelt laws back then. My mother sat in the front with me, and soon they were off, driving up First Street, turning left on State, all the way up to the emergency lobby of El Hospital General. The place was packed. She hurried to the front and tried to express the urgency of the situation to the people there, but they told her that it was a very long wait, and handed her a clipboard of forms to fill out. She said she cried to them that she sensed that I was in trouble because I had stopped crying, but they didn't seem to care. Not liking to draw attention, my father tried to urge her to sit down and wait, but she refused, and so she was asked to please step aside. A nurse who was returning from her break saw my mother crying and noticed that I had turned blue, so she said, Este niño se está muriendo, and quickly I was whisked away to the emergency room. Soon, there were several doctors and nurses working on me. I had a bunch of tubes sticking out of me from everywhere. I still have tiny scars from this. It turns out I had gotten really bad pneumonia, and I'd gotten treatment just in time to be saved. My mother had saved my life. El doctor me dijo que te cuide bien, que era muy probable que ibas a ser débil, siempre débil. She said she took this to mean that I'd be sickly, in and out of the hospital, so she made sure to feed me well, to thicken me up, and I helped her because I was really good at eating. She'd give me my older brother's leftovers since he was a finicky eater. She'd defend me from my father when he wanted to amend me up by maybe speaking too harshly to me, protected me from my siblings. But this perhaps was a disservice because coming of age can be rough. Middle school and high school was tough. It's tough for everyone, but I think more so for someone in the closet. I couldn't imagine existing in a world where I had to be this thing people hated. So I stayed in the closet. I never told her. In my early 20s, after getting my heart broken, my weakness caught up to me and I wanted to end it. Dramatic, I know. I was at my lowest point when she found me crying inconsolably, saying that I didn't want to live. And this is why I think she told me this story about how she'd saved my life. Through tears she said, "Tal vez no le entendí bien al doctor. Nunca has sido débil de salud. Al contrario, nunca te me has enfermado mucho. Pero es muy fácil que te lastimen. Eres débil en muchas otras formas." I guess I took this and ran with it. It became the story I told myself, my excuse for my lack of willpower, for my lack of ambition. I am weak. For almost 2 decades, I've never allowed myself to risk feeling heartbreak again. Weakness has been my justification for taking so long to recover after not being able to save her, for losing her in the very same emergency room exactly 30 winters later, where her voice, her strength saved me. Eres débil. You know, I think there's strength in being honest with yourself, owning up to the fact that it's all just been a convenient narrative, only a story, like so many we all tell ourselves. I do have weaknesses, areas to work on, definitely, but I also have strengths. And one of those strengths is my love and desire to connect with people and with their stories. Perhaps it's taken me a while to get here, but I'm here now. And I plan to reemerge into the world as it reopens, focusing mainly on my strengths to make the best of the life I have left because of that night when my young, strong mother saved me.
Origin stories leave lasting impacts. They can stop you from moving forward, or a little seed of hope is planted and it can blossom with the right conditions. Those little seeds can be so delicate. They need lots of love to continue to grow. I know lots of you bought some plantitas. I did. And most of them are still alive, so I'm pretty proud of myself. And well, if you can keep a plant alive, you can get a pet and you're probably ready to take care of a baby or something, right?
Well, I already struggle enough with just taking care of myself. I think I'm good with just being Tío Jaime for now, especially with how scary the world is these days. And I'm not just talking about like the political or racial tension, but I mean, on top of that, we're in a pandemic. You know what? I don't want to talk too much about that, but I can't imagine bringing a life into the world right now. And I guess I don't have to imagine it. I'll just listen to our next piece by this episode's guest poet, Lucero Chavez. And it is titled Nacimiento.
The machines emit an incessant beeping. But for you, everything is quiet. It's almost midnight. You walk a laughably long hallway, alone. Backpack hanging heavy, phone clutched tight, glasses fogging, mask slipping, chanclas shuffling along in the dim light of the full moon. Intercoms, empty waiting rooms, and exhausted nurses who look at you skeptically. Are you sure your water broke? How far apart are your contractions? You don't know your own pain threshold, have never even broken a bone, so you grimace and clench your teeth. Hope your eyes can communicate that you're scared. Soon, you're doubled over in pain, straining to hear your baby's heartbeat on a monitor. Admitted yet? Your phone dings. Waiting on COVID test, you respond. Swab up your nose and down your throat. This wasn't in the baby books. That cup you peed in to confirm that you're in labor? Sitting on the counter. The indignity. Admitted. You shove your clothes into your bag, sling it over your shoulder, tie your gown behind you. Not that modesty matters for the next 72 hours. And you shuffle down another hallway. Can my husband come yet? Family history questions, more contractions, 3 a.m. Your husband walks in, and it's almost comical. New protocols means no trips to the car. It's one shot or bust. All the essentials carefully balanced in his arms. You start shivering. You have a fever. Baby's heart is racing. Your birth plan is out the window. Your yoga ball, useless. Doctor recommends a C-section. You didn't anticipate this scenario. You get wheeled into a sterile operating room. It's like all those doctor shows, except you're watching from the inside. 1, 2, 3, 4, 20 lap pads. Scalpel, 6 inches. 4:41 a.m. 1, 2, 3, 4, 20 lap pads. Machines buzz, baby cries, umbilical cord is cut. Where is my child? This life I created and nurtured in my womb for 40 weeks and 3 days. You get wheeled back to your room. A baby is placed in your arms. Your baby. And then meds, fluids. Can you move your toes? And then more meds, fluids. Can you try to walk? Shift change every 12 hours. Smile, nod, swallow. Motherhood. You watch your husband become a father, transformed, reborn. The machines drum on, but all you hear is your baby's breathing. My name means light. To give birth in Spanish is to dar a luz. We are magical in this way. And baby, you are magical in every way.
The stars aligned for the birth of a healthy baby boy. Full disclosure, that is my sister. I'm older, so I'm wiser, of course, but giving birth during these COVID times adds another huge layer of stress. And my heart goes out to all the new mommies out there. For now, it's visits with masks on and negative COVID test in hand. He's our baby Mario, and I get to be the baby's fairy godmother.
Fairy godmother, huh? Nina Jesenia. You know, my sister made me a Nino a while ago, and I remembered how honored I was by it at the time. But I mean, it makes sense because growing up, we were fairly close. I mean, we all spend so much time with our siblings in those early years. And then suddenly we're all adults and everybody's busy doing their own thing. And I think at times we even take them for granted. Our next story is also about siblings. It is a piece by Albert Corado, who I asked to tell us a little bit about him and his sister. Here's Albert with his piece, Mely.
My first memory on this planet is the memory of the birth of my sister Mely. She was born on April 23rd, 1991. I don't remember being at the hospital with my mom, but I do remember her bringing her home. She was a newborn baby in the city of Los Angeles. Growing up in Los Angeles, I had a lot of favorite places, but one that was super special to me and my sister Mely was Echo Park Lake. We got to hang around with turtles and ducks and walk around this very cool lake, and if we were super lucky, we got to go on the swan boat rides. We loved those things. They were so much fun until they weren't. And by that I mean there's a memory that sticks in my brain and has stuck in my brain ever since it happened. I was 6 years old, my sister Mely was 3, and my dad decided to take us on the swan boat rides. We were so excited. We went up and down that lake. We had such a fun time. And for some reason, My dad thought it would be a good idea to go under the big waterfall in the middle of the lake. If you've been there, you've seen this sort of big fountain thing that spits water out. Water comes down. It's very beautiful. But when you're a 6-year-old kid and you're a 3-year-old kid, it's terrifying. The water is hard. It hits your head. You don't know what's going on. I remember I started to cry. My sister started to cry. My dad didn't mean anything by it. He didn't mean to intentionally scar us or make us cry. He just thought it would be fun. But I remember that day because it was my first brush with terror, with that feeling when you know something's not right and you want to do your best to get out of that situation and protect anyone else who might be there. And I wanted to protect my sister. She was only 3. She was crying, didn't know what was going on. And the water hitting my head was hurting me. So I knew it had to be hurting her. And as I think about it, as life goes on, it's very silly that I ever started crying at that was ever something that affected me that way. But when you're a kid, that's how it is. As time went on, I'd be terrified of a lot of things. Roller coasters, presenting a book report in front of class, asking someone out. My sister would go through the same thing. It's just how life is, but that first moment of terror will always stick with you. Fast forward to over 20 years later, I'm with Mely. We're adults now. We're in New York. I'd been there before, but Mely hadn't. Wanted to explore it. So I figured I'd show her around the little places I knew, and we would just explore as much as we could in one day. My brother lives in Jersey, so we took a train from Jersey into Penn Station, and we ran around Manhattan, eating bagels and pizza and everything we can get our hands on. It was so cold. It was January 2nd of 2018. At one point, we decided to go into Brooklyn, so we walked over the Brooklyn Bridge. And when I told Mely that she was soon going to see the Statue of Liberty, as she walked along the bridge, she got so excited. And when it finally came into view, I remember walking behind her a little bit. And she got so excited. Started taking pictures, and we were eating our noodles and drinking our beers, and got an Uber to go back to Penn Station and went to Jersey. And it was the best day I ever had with Mely. It was incredible. She was gone 6 months later. She was killed by the LAPD. From Echo Park Lake to the Silver Lake Trader Joe's where Mely was killed by the police, it's about 4 miles. I think about that day a lot. Having our first moment of terror there in Echo Park Lake, I remember the feeling of wanting to protect Mely, being scared and wanting to make sure that she was okay, and then to have her life be taken 4 miles away. And for a long time I beat myself up that I couldn't save her the day that she died. I've mostly gotten past that now. That kind of thinking isn't healthy, but sometimes when I'm at Echo Park Lake these days, I think about that day and I think about how I should have been there to protect her, and I wasn't. And so now I find myself alone. No Mely, no swan boats, just pain.
This story is very tragic and also very infuriating to know that the officers who fired into this crowded Trader Joe's would not be charged with the crime for Mely's death. This wound is still so fresh, still very recent for Albert, so we thank him for sharing a bit more about his relationship with his sister and her life. And from following his feed on social media, it's clear that if anything came from this, if anything was born from this, it's Albert's newfound passion for activism and fighting for social justice. I'm always very grateful to those in our community that get involved, who speak out, who do something to help with all of the injustices happening in our beloved country. As a lawyer, my sister Lucero had the opportunity to visit a detention center in Texas, and the next piece is inspired by that experience. Once again, here is Lucero Chavez with her final poem, Declarations.
Pretend you're a writer for the New York Times, he said. I guess that means forget you're the daughter of immigrants from Southeast LA. Keep your head up. Describe what you see. I'll do my best. I jump on a direct flight to McAllen, Texas, or Phoenix, Arizona, or Port LaBelle, Florida. I forget because it was all with 48 hours notice. I'm qualified because I work with children and speak Spanish. I tell myself I can't be drawn into their stories. I've got a job to do. Can't just be another person they share their experiences with. Sympathetic, but useless. I drive south on a two-way highway, border patrol stations and Whataburgers scattered every few miles. I pull up to a chain link fence in front of old buildings and cement blocks, push a dusty intercom to gain access. Is this what he meant? Offices have been turned into bedrooms. No one expected this man's policy to require so many beds, to take so many children through state-sponsored kidnapping. There is no spinning this, but I can't forget. I'm here as an observer first. There's no place for anger in journalism. Everyone wants to help get these kids home, hoping to prevent more damage than what's already been done. Smiles and apologetic tones. It's not their fault. I've never been to an orphanage. I've never even seen Annie. But I think that's what this place feels like. ¿Cómo te llamas? ¿Cuántos años tienes? ¿Dónde naciste? ¿Cuándo fue la última vez que vistes a tu mamá? She shows me a bracelet. Says a bunch of girls sit and make them, stringing together their mother's names. They aren't allowed to touch each other, can't even braid each other's hair, have to hug themselves at night. Is it okay if I tell your story? If it helps me get back to my mom? They caught us near Calexico, but I don't know where they sent her. They took her away one day and I haven't seen her since. ¿Cómo te llamas? ¿Cuántos años tienes? ¿Dónde naciste? I listen and observe and take notes. They put their heads down, wipe away silent tears, ask questions I can't answer. This is exactly what we need. And it should have never happened. See you in court, 45. I drive back to my hotel room. I can smell the Rio Bravo from here. I eat my grocery store salad, deadbolt the door, and sit down to write. I don't cry. I describe, paraphrase, quote. I don't edit or editorialize. I tell them what I saw, what I heard, what they said. New York Times, meet Southeast LA. I drive to the airport, present my passport to the weary-looking TSA agent. His uniform says Sanchez. What's your name? Where are you from? ¿Dónde naciste?
This poem and the story it tells is very moving. I'm truly grateful to Lucero for sharing this with us. The girl she interviewed in her piece was reunited with her mother because this nonprofit public counsel made sure of it. There are currently several lawsuits happening because of these forced separations, and if you'd like to donate or get involved, you could find more information on our Instagram. I know this episode has been something of a downer, but these are true stories that we're telling, and sometimes life is like that. I guess we went into this first month and we were still shaking off some of the bleakness of 2020. So as we close out January and some of the unrealistic expectations we thought this year would magically bring us, let's close out our episode with this last cuento, I think also about expectations, by Miriam Peniche. She titled this piece, A New Moon.
I'm sick and tired of hearing that women my age should be married and have children. Why are women made to feel that if they never marry or have kids, they're not complete? It's not fair. I'm 40 years old, and I'm at a point in my life where I have given up all hope that I will ever be a mom, because the reality is I'm past the time I could have a baby. Instead, I'm living my life to the fullest. I have a great job, a nice apartment, decent car, hanging out with friends on most weekends. And most importantly, I'm proving to everyone, well, mostly proving to myself, that a sexual double standard should not exist between men and women. I've always thought it was so unfair how when men sleep around, they're heroes, but that if a woman is sexually liberated, well, then they're whores. For instance, recently, I had 2 lovers. Yes, lovers. A term a little more romantic than calling them booty calls, I think. There was Fat Guy and Busboy. Now, Fat Guy is a chubby white fellow who had a talent for giving the best oral pleasure. Then there was Busboy, a Mexican guy who worked in a restaurant and who, for being a short guy, was surprisingly well endowed. I guess you can say I was having my cake and it was being eaten too. Life was pretty good. Then everything stops when I miss my period. It's about a week late, which is not uncommon, but I know something isn't right. I feel weird. I'm freaking out, so I go to a friend's house on a Friday to take a pregnancy test. I don't know why I couldn't do it at home by myself. Never in my 40 years had I had a pregnancy scare, so I think I needed the moral support of another woman. I pee on a stick, and I wait, and wait. Those minutes seem like an eternity. We both look at the pregnancy test 3 minutes later, and it looks like nothing. It didn't look negative. It didn't look positive. So she's like, "Are you sure you peed on a stick?" I do it again, and nothing. "You're fine. Stop stressing." We go to dinner, have a few cocktails, and call it a night. The morning after, I still feel strange. 2 days later, I go to another friend's house to take 2 more pregnancy tests. This time I take the ones that say pregnant or not pregnant, just to be sure. So 4 tests later, yes, that's right, 4, in case anyone's into math, my suspicions are right. I am a single 40-year-old with a bun in the oven. And just like that, my whole life changes in an instant. I panicked. I didn't know what I was going to do. And after the initial shock of finding out I was pregnant wore off, I realized I didn't know who the father of my baby was. I made a doctor's appointment a few days later. I had a ton of questions for the doctor. When was the conception date? Can my body even carry a baby full term? Am I too old, too fat to have a healthy pregnancy? How long do I have until I can safely decide to terminate the pregnancy? I'm so confused, overwhelmed, scared. I'm feeling every emotion possible. My head's spinning, my heart's racing, and then in the middle of what seems like I'm having a panic attack at the doctor's office, he turns to me and he says, "If I may speak to you as a person and not as a doctor, you may never have this opportunity again. And the fact that you are pregnant is a miracle. Give this a chance." I take a deep breath, and I realize at that moment that he's right. I always wanted to be a mom. I always imagined what it would be like to carry human life inside of me. I always wanted to have a little baby that I could love unconditionally. So that day, I chose life, and somehow, miraculously, life chose me. From that day forward, I embraced my pregnancy and everything that came with it. Over the next 9 months, my body and my life transformed into something new, exciting. I loved being pregnant. I felt beautiful, powerful, confident. And even though there were definitely times when the anxiety of my situation would creep up, I tried my hardest to face things head on. On a beautiful sunny day in late May of 2018, surrounded by amazing strong women who I am lucky enough to have as friends, after 30 hours of labor and an emergency C-section, I gave birth to a beautiful baby girl that I named Luna. Sometimes when I close my eyes, I can remember that day as if it was yesterday. It's an experience that will forever be ingrained in my heart and soul. My mother always wanted this moment for me. I wish she could have been there. I brought Luna home from the hospital, and in between healing from a C-section, trying to breastfeed, and basically learning how to be a mother, I still hadn't dealt with the fact that I had no idea who the father of my baby was. I finally did get to sorting that whole thing out. As it turns out, my daughter is full-blooded Mexican. I'm still sick and tired of hearing that women my age should be married and have children. But that day, I gave birth to my baby girl. I also gave birth to a new me. The past 2.5 years have been a journey like no other. I can't wait to see where this crazy adventure takes us.
I could certainly identify with Miriam's piece. Personally, I was rooting for the busboy, so I was happy with that outcome. All kidding aside, having a child is a huge decision for most people. I know I found myself wondering and questioning my choices around having a child or not. I know I look like I'm 19, but it can be a sore spot for a lot of women. I think at the end of the day, it's about what you want for yourself and your life and your family, no matter what society dictates or the pressures that we may feel. December held some challenges for us. We are figuring things out.
We did definitely hit a few more snags and problems bringing you the second episode, and thank you for your patience. This episode was a little more intense than the first, but we just try to really bring stories that are real. So the tone of each episode will be its own thing.
Vamos empezando y nos falta práctica, pero ahí la llevamos. Our next episode's theme is Sana Sana, stories of healing, curanderas, sobadores, curses you shook off, that one time you saw la Virgen en a tortilla, healing from a broken heart, limpias, how you paid for therapy using your savings, or however our storytellers decide to interpret this theme. Reach out if you would like to participate at quemecuentaspod@gmail.com or on our Instagram page. On behalf of Que Me Cuentas, I'd like to thank our cuentistas for sharing their stories in our second episode. For more information on them and the podcast, visit our pages on Facebook or Instagram at Que Me Cuentas Pod.
Our theme song was created for us by Alfredo Avila.
If you like the show, don't forget to rate and review and tell your friends and your neighbors. It's all word of mouth, so help us out if you can.
And in case any of you guys are interested, there is currently, and by currently I mean February of the year 2021, it is the Teatro Frida Kahlo 10-Minute Play Festival. I have a piece in it called La Cundina, and it's one of 10 short plays, so we'll have information for you guys in our social media accounts. Si todavía están escuchando, gracias por su apoyo. Thank you for your support. Please come back, and hasta la próxima.
Thank you, everybody. We love you.
¿Qué me cuentas tú?